voting arena tonight. We'll have a, I don't know what to call it now. Maybe I should know. Maybe I'm a little bit overexcited or something. But we have Professor Pat Utomi with us tonight. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes, welcome, sir. And I have my friendly colleague, Kingsley Okafor, with me, panning for me tonight. You're welcome, sir. What a privilege to have you on our studio.
Such a great pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I just saw you at the Afri-Nexim Bank their conference tonight. I think...
That general meeting is taking place in Abuja.
Abuja, yes. You're welcome, sir. Sir, we really want to go straight to the point and talk about situations in Nigeria, especially voting, INEC, and the electoral system. Transfer of electionary results, automatic and all that. This has been a major problems in Nigeria. And 2027 is just down the line. There are a lot of other things that we could have taken you on, but with time, I'm sure you'll come here, some other time and we'll talk about it. But tonight, we're talking about transmission of electoral results. That has been a problem to us. INEC told us that they got the IRFs, the beavers first, then the IRFs, and that there's going to be a transmission of election results electronically. At the tail end of it, just at the nick of time, they changed their song. And we saw what we saw in 2023. 2027 is just around the corner. How do we go from here?
Yeah. I think part of the problem we have in Nigeria is that people don't think deeply enough about the consequences of their actions. The electoral process in Nigeria has been flawed since this republic, even going back to 1999, but it has gotten progressively worse every election. There are a couple of reasons. Political office and power is too attractive in this country, not for reasons of service, but for goal substitution. Reasons other than serving people, the very essence of the democratic process. And so you have criminal elements, and I don't pull any punches here. Our political class has made politics a criminal enterprise. So criminal elements who want power at any cost, and they go to unbelievable lengths to sabotage the will of the people. You have the people who have not become aware enough of the consequence for their lives to realize that this is a matter of life and death. These characters are taking away our tomorrow. And so they get away with it and they want to try again. Where there's no consequence, people are encouraged to try again. Just 2 weeks ago, June 12th, I was interviewed in Washington by a gentleman, Nigerian, who also was a blogger, and who has been involved in the democratic surveillance movement for many years, worked for NDI. He reminded me of how he was one of the organizers of a trip on election debates, which brought the late Raymond Percy, myself, Amisu Shira, and a number of others to Washington, I think around 2000. His name is Bodunri Adebo. And in the conversation before he began to tape, we actually went through the elections from 1999 and told jokes about practical, obvious flaws in each election. I started with a story about the 1999 elections where at that time there was a US-Nigeria Economic Institute, and Aliko Dangote was president, I was vice president of that institute. And so we hosted the U.S. delegation that came to monitor the election, led by President Jimmy Carter. We sent him to dinner at the Transcorp Hilton. And I said to President Carter, who I was a little familiar with, I said, Mr. President, how did the elections go? President Carter tried to open his mouth. Nothing came out. He didn't know what to say. And President Lyman, who was U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, a very good friend of mine when he was ambassador in Lagos, then kind of like pulled me aside and said to me, Pat, if the army wanted to make this election look bad, they sure tried hard. And he told me a story. He said they were, on election day, they drove into Nasarawa State. And as they were going, they saw some polling station. They stopped there. And they asked, what's happening here? Nobody's trying to vote. Well, the officials there said, we don't know what's happening. No. Nobody has showed up since morning, not one person. The Carter was very worried. How can people be so? You mean they don't care enough about voting? Yeah, we don't know for them all. So they went off, went down. An hour later, they were coming back. President Carter said, stop and see if anybody has showed up in this booth. When they stopped there, everybody that was registered to vote had voted. So President Carter shook his head. They didn't go too far. They saw soldiers actually carrying ballot boxes.
He's under 1 hour.
Under 1 hour. So he said, President Carter was so dispirited. And I said to Baduri that, in the end, I think I saw a statement that Carter said that elections seem to have reflected the will of the Nigerian people. That's the way he would count it. Seem to have reflected the will of the Nigerian people. And Baduri laughed. He said, because he was working for NDI at the time already.
Yeah.
He said, that statement that you are talking about was released after Carter was airborne. That Carter never came back to Nigeria.
Wow.
He could never get over it.
Wow.
And this is one of the best elections we have.
Compared to what we have now.
Then, the one of 2007, I was a candidate. I ran for president. And the so-called monitors had Madeleine Albright, former U.S. Secretary of State, and former Canadian Prime Minister Martin. I had the privilege of having lunch with them. And they said to me, this thing people have just had, what do you say you call it? Election? And again, Baduri reminded me, that was Madeleine Albright's last ever visit to Nigeria. I mean, it seems like any really honest person that comes to Nigeria for elections doesn't want to come back
again.
And the political class in Nigeria has no shame. It doesn't have worried them that this is the impression the world goes away with about Nigeria. Because for them, anything doesn't matter. Just grab power
and go.
But let me explain that it does matter. Because you think that I've grabbed the power now. Point is, you don't have legitimacy.
Yes.
The point of elections is to confer legitimacy on a person. What does legitimacy do? It makes decision making easier. Because the people believe that you're acting in their interest and you should really be acting in their interest. Because the fundamental question is always asked at election time, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? If it's a 4-year cycle. And are there more jobs created since the last election? Because the way your welfare improves is you have a job. Now, Nigerian politicians don't even respond to that question. Better off. Who are you to ask if you are better off? They don't care about you.
Yeah.
The Nigerian political class is a disgrace. Let's be honest to ourselves. You cannot have a country that it has just been declared, or not declared, shown that 75% of people who live in rural Nigeria today live in chronic poverty. And the Senate president gets up and they just say anything, distribute money anyhow. And Nigerians are incredibly poor. In most countries, they will be burning these guys on the streets. In most countries. So, I don't understand it. I've tried my best. I've struggled 50 years. And I really have come to a point that, you know, I have my duty to history. I'll do the needful. But this has been a tragedy. And it will come back to haunt all of these guys. I am telling you, it will haunt them. There will be judgment. How, when, I may not be able to tell. But one thing I know is there will be judgment.
Okay, Prof. 2023 came. Or let me leave my colleague to
what I wanted to
ask a question.
Say, I mean, between elections, you are still going to find some personalities that people are going to, root for and still believe in, no matter how we lose all the hopes available in our system. People will always remember you, particularly what you did by stepping aside for Mr. Peter Obi, and it was like a revelation. 2023 election, we learned something we have never learned before, that the people can stand in for who they believe in. I'm going to ask, 2027 is becoming too murky. All political parties in opposition are in shambles. The latest of it yesterday was the one in SDP. In one way or the other, none of them seem to be at peace, except for this evening we just realized that PDP, is trying to come together. Do you see a situation where a beyond coalition, where in 2027, Mr. P2B, for you to step aside for somebody, you found something in that person? Do you see a situation where you face difficulty in finding a platform to run?
I do not know who instigates the so-called crisis in these parties, but the fellows who are used, quote unquote, for those crises should recognize that they will live in infamy. Whether they like it or the crumbs they get from these people now blind them, but they will live in infamy. Because the consequence of their behavior is to rob a people of the possibilities of salvation. Now, sometimes they say, oh, nobody stimulated these crises, the people are fighting amongst themselves so that I don't know, whatever it is, whether it's stimulated from outside, or the people themselves are the ones generating it because of what they are looking for. It's neither here nor there. The bottom line is that they keep making our democracy not work. However, I will not despair in a manner of speaking, because the way people kept saying, oh, they can't come together, Kenya can't come together, and suddenly Ford came and said, and it worked. I think that the people get to a point. That was the point of the 2023 elections. Nobody did it. I mean, people give people like me credit and all of that. People were just fed up and wanted something different. Wanted a change. I mean, what had happened was that a couple of us were we're convinced that what the PDP and APC represented were aberrations to good governance. That Nigeria needed a third way. Pardon me. And this, bear in mind, I came to from the fact that I was there at the table when they founded the PDP. I was there at the table when they founded the APC. I mean, how was I at the table? The struggle to free us from military rule. Forget Bola Tinubu distributing awards and honors to people that he says were June 12, whatever. Most of those people were not on his list, the real heroes. Thank God that these people recognize that the thing is a mess when you don't have Olisa Bakoba, Clement, Wanko, myself, and all of those. But that's neither here nor there. All of those who ran away are now trying to claim that they were the June 12
heroes.
Well, you people don't laugh at Lamido. What he said was fundamentally true. Anyhow, we fought for June 12. And eventually the military were exhausted after Abacha's departure. And we were coming to elections in 99. The group that I was critical to founding, it's called the Concerned Professionals. Joe Bukwe's book, Heroes of Democracy, had some of us on the cover of the book. And it was about concerned professionals. And we met just as democracy was about to return to determine what we should do. There were two major trains of thinking. One was generally represented by the late Waziri Mohammed and Donald Duke. And that group was of the opinion that all these things we have been writing, because what we were doing, a part of the CP struggle, that we bought pages of newspapers, maybe 2-3 times a week, full pages. And in an advertorial, so not just press release, advertorial that we controlled, we talked about what was wrong with the country, what should be done, how it should be done. You know, I mean, it hit a certain chord in the country. So they said we should go and implement those things. We should take power, seek power, take it, and implement those things that we have been writing should be done. Another group argued that if we seek office today, people might say, that's why they were struggling, they wanted power. So the debate was put between those who wanted us to participate directly and seek power and those who thought we should just be citizens as professionals and allow the politicians to go forward. In many ways, I had the swing vote, or so to speak, because I chaired that meeting. It took place in my office on Idowu Taylor in Victoria Island in Lagos. And after that meeting, we came out, we were all standing in front of my office and just kind of talking, and Donald said to me, well, you will have decided you don't want me, I'm going back to Cross River to go and organize it and take it over. And he did. Just him and two others, Gershom Basi and Liel, took over Cross River State. We could have done exactly the same thing in every state.
Do you regret that today?
I do. I think it's one of my greatest misjudgments in a matter of speaking. A couple of years later, when we saw the PDP bungling everything, my friends began to call and say, look, we made a mistake. I said, yes, I agree, so what should we do? That's how it was decided that we should try and form a party and contest the next election. In the process, we found that Ukemusu had just registered ADC, and we then developed an alliance, and I became the presidential candidate of the ADC. That's how I contested the 2007 elections as a representative of that group. And of course, the 2007 elections were a farce. You know, that's not Albright pointed out. So when that happened, my inclination was, wow, we need to go back to drawing boards, forget this political thing, go back to civil society activism and create democracy in Nigeria. We don't have a democracy. This thing is not working. But then we began to talk about it. Then we said, okay, maybe there are other strategies. I met in a conference in France by Aspen Institute, France, in the Europe-Africa Summit. A Ugandan, former Ugandan foreign minister called Pat Utomi. Olara's a smart guy. And, and I said to Olara, I'm trying to find how we can create an elite that will redeem this continent. And I said to him, I'm thinking that when I get back to Nigeria, I'll put together like 72, people of clear thinking from all major sectors. Private sector, public sector, military, whatever. Let's go 4 or 5 day retreat and really look at what the problem is with our country. And that I would like him, Olara, to come and give, because Olara gave a speech that, was stunning. White people were very excited about South Africa returning at that time to reckoning with Mandela's release and all of that. And they would say, South Africa can now lead Africa. Olara grabbed the microphone and said, you guys don't know what you're talking about. He said, when South Africa falls apart, if Mandela dies tomorrow, South Africa will just fall apart completely. And in fact, maybe the faction will come from Winnie that will, be pushing for this, everybody who wants a red BMW as the victory prize. And that if we want to get Africa right, we'll get Nigeria right. As Nigeria goes, so goes Africa. So I said, Olara, you come and talk to this Nigerian elite at this retreat. I began to talk to a few people, including the late Waziri Mohammed, who had mentioned a few minutes earlier. And one day I was in Abuja here. I was actually working on some committee on reforming JAM. So when I got a call from Waziri, and Waziri says, look, this thing you've been talking about, this is a moment for it. I said, what? He says, look, all the southern governors are meeting in Lagos. Mm-hmm. And that we could have a meeting tonight, like in Aliko Dangote's house, and raise your issue and the things you wanted, this retreat you're talking about, and this. Okay, I wasn't thinking of it that way, but why not? It's an opportunity. I went straight from the meeting place to the airport. I didn't even go back to my hotel room. I got on a plane and returned to Lagos. And that night, we all gathered in Aliko's house, most of the governors, southern governors. James Ibori, Jules Okalo, of course, Donald, and all of that. And I said to them, look, what has occurred to me as an alternative path that we could travel is that we take one or two of us who moved in and got their positions, like Donald. Take his state, for example. All of us come together, put our total brain power, our global network and everything, and make of his state an example of how you govern. And then Nigerian people will know that it's possible to govern well. Yeah, it's a good idea. And one of the governors, I won't mention his name, just say, oh boy, you to speak grammar. See as we did, no babes. But
do you think there is hope for Nigeria? Democracy, to sustain democracy.
Life, there must always be hope.
Okay, before we even talk on that, I want to dwell on the option or a suggestion you're trying to introduce about having a parallel government. I think we should hear from you.
It's not a parallel government. No, a shadow government.
A shadow government,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, they deliberately say parallel government.
Just to-
They who said they would have a parallel government and now says
Exactly, I get what you mean. Back in 2014, 2015.
Exactly. So now you had that idea, and from everywhere there were a lot of criticism to that idea.
ignorance is a terrible thing.
Yes, can you explain to us, sir,
Yeah.
what you wanted to do?
See, by the way, this idea of a shadow government is not a new idea at all. It's existed since 2008 elections I talked about. After the election of 2008, I felt really sorry for Nigeria. And I thought, what way could I contribute to improving democracy? And I thought, one of the problems we have is we don't have viable oppositions in Nigeria. Because Nigerian politicians are always looking for where to chop. And where you are chopping, if you have good manners, you don't talk. So I thought, okay, let me put together a group of people and call them a shadow cabinet. And our business would be to point out alternatives to public policy that would better help society move forward. I shared this idea with Chief Olufalaye, who, at the death of Chief Enaoro, had more or less taken over the leadership of the progressives. Chief Olufalaye said to me, it's a wonderful idea, but you know, now this party will say, why did they have only 3 shadow members? Why do they have 4? Now a new warrior will start. This entitlement mindset will take over. So when I saw that he was not very strong on the concept, even though he liked it, but he was more concerned with the bickerings that will come over who will get more seats, I decided to put together from civil society, maybe a few politicians, people I know well and know their commitment, and assign them different portfolios to have a watching brief on, so that they can speak on behalf of the opposition on those areas, with intelligence, with information, and all of that. So it's not just blah, 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 talking, you know, you are speaking with evidence, you're talking with knowledge and all of that. I've given one particular example several times on this matter, especially because I've not seen him in up to 10 years, just to show how long ago this idea was. Dr. Lekik Biton, who was Commissioner for Health under Tinubu in Lagos.
Yeah.
He was the first health spokesperson in the shadow cabinet that I put together. He attended several meetings in my Victoria Land office. Just after we began meeting, I got an invitation to come to Abuja. It was a Friday. The invitation was from the president, Umaru Yaradua. I got to Abuja, I went to his office in the villa, and David Adeviye, who was his principal secretary, came out and met me and said the president was in a meeting, I should please give him a few minutes. 1 minute later, President Yaradua came out, a very polite, nice man, and says, sorry, I mean, this meeting, I'll try and end it within the next 15 minutes. But the kind of conversation I want to have with you is not even office conversation. When I finish the meeting, I'll go and say my Friday prayers, and then let's meet at the residence. And I want to have all the time in the world that I can with you today. I said, fine. Anyway, long and short, we get to the residence, and I'm mentioning names so that people, you know, the reality of this, not something you're inventing. The last 2 people to leave the villa that day were then Group Managing Director of NNPC, whose name was also Yaradua,
Okay.
and the Attorney General, Michael Andoaka.
Okay.
So after Andreka left, President ushered me and the friend that was with me into a small room, and then turns to me and says, "Professor, what is the problem with Nigeria?" So I laughed and I said, "Mr. President, that will take 6 hours of my speaking. Do you have the energy to listen for 6 hours? Try me." So I began to talk. I don't know how long I spoke, but certainly it wasn't 6 hours. Maybe 2 hours or something. Then I stopped. And he said to me, "You see why people say that few people have your kind of clarity on problems of Nigeria and the solutions to them. I wonder what you are doing outside. Come into the government and we will together solve these problems of Nigeria. I understand the elections were not good. I want to change all of those things. I want to make a good country." I liked it. I liked his style. Still, his offer of a cabinet position, I was not going to rush into. And I said to him, "Thank you very much for your generosity in asking me to come in and work with you. It's just that the history of Africa is laden with what political scientists call the cooperative state. The cooperative state is where the state tries to incorporate elements of dissent, elements of strong voice.
To gag them.
Yes. I said, I don't want to be a statistic like that. I said, I was 27 years old when President Shagari brought me into government. I spent barely a few months in government and realized that I probably made a mistake. Not because President Shagari and Vice President Kwame were not well-intentioned, because each time I got a chance to speak with them, because I used to, President Shagari, was a chain smoker, but he never smoked in public.
Yeah.
And so when he wanted to smoke, he also had so much respect for the office of president that he didn't smoke inside the office. He would come outside in the field, in the damn barracks. From my window, I'll see him, and I'll go out to go and chat with him. And he was always receptive when I come up with ideas like, this boy's head is born, equipment, same thing. But when I then talk with my permanent secretary, every time I finish saying, this is what and this is what I want and what I want, he will say, "Doctor, you see this thing you're saying? He will step on this person's toe. He will step on that person's leg. So when they say, Mr. Boo, his name was Hassan Boo, the late Hassan Boo. I said, Mr. Boo, is there anything that can be done without stepping on something?" So anyway, the point that came to me, and it could then followed shortly, was if you are ever going to go into government again, don't do it without a critical mass and access of influence, which is why I keep looking at, if I'm going to be in government, I'll be in the chief executive kind of position, because I know that I am making the decisions.
Yeah.
So I told President Yaradua that story. Told him, in fact, I gave an example of Emmanuel Nsang, Dr. Nsang. If you all remember him, was president of the Nigerian Medical Association, who was then made Minister for Health and was used to rubbish the enemy. And after they dropped him, people who were around said he was crying like a baby because he had nowhere to go back to. And how many of you have ever heard of him since then?
Yeah.
He's still alive.
Okay.
But he became a political non-person. And I said, I don't want that to happen to me. Be assured that I am a true patriot. You can call me at 1 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever time, and I will give you the benefit of my opinion on anything. But this business of coming to be minister, I have just created a group of friends that we call ourselves a shadow cabinet. So I wake up the next day and say, I've joined you. How do you think they will think of me? He said, well, you will still make much more impact from inside. So I said to him, look, you can appoint 7 good people, give them critical ministries. Then you can appoint all these your PDP people to the ministries that share contract, transport, this, that. They can be doing that while this core and navigating the country towards somewhere. And he threw it back at me and said, okay. No, I said, I will then be available to meet with them anytime they want and give them benefit of my position and share with them the documents of the shadow cabinet, the things we have agreed to. Because our goal is the betterment of the country. We're not looking to score any points. He said to me, okay, why don't you find those 7 good people and join yourself to them and come. At that point in time, there wasn't too much to argue with. So I said to him, okay, let me go back to Lagos. I'll write down 7 names and send to you. He said, okay. I did. When I gave the envelope to the then head of service of the Federation, Steve Orosai. That was the very last time President Yar'Adua and I spoke before he died. Now, I don't know what happened. First of all, I assumed that because I had one particular name that I knew he didn't get along with, that because of him, and I can mention the name El-Rufai.
Okay.
That maybe because I had El-Rufai on that list, he probably decided no. And I just kept everything quiet and forgot about it. Of course, like I said, he died shortly after. But many years later, I was discussing something with the Sultan of Sokoto. And this kind of came up when I told this story. And he said, you don't know the villa. He probably never saw your list and went to his grave thinking that he's not. Which made me feel very bad because my intention was not to snub. For a president to come as far as he came, showed a real commitment and desire to make for a better country.
Was the name supposed to go to the head of service, or could have delivered it directly to him?
I live in Lagos. The president of the country was ill. He was traveling.
Okay.
So I had to give it to somebody who I knew had access.
Quicker access. So before we leave, there's something I want you to help us. I know it's not your personal duty to make Nigeria good, but you've been patriotic. There's no limit as to what you can do. The youth are shouting and sounding a mandatory electronic transmission of our results. Do you have any voice to lend directly in that regard, either to talk to a senator or whatever, so that they can present a bill and let it go through?
I've been talking to everybody who will listen. That is good. I just spoke on an X Spaces session with, I think her name is Neko.
Nako, yes.
Nako.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw
One of the
yesterday
governor was
also.
there.
Yeah, one of the governors. Yes, Tony Randy and the other guy. The convener, he was here.
Yeah, okay. Pastor or something.
Yeah, Oaks.
Pastor Oaks,
yes.
So, yes, I keep doing that. I will keep doing, clearly, if the fellows who are in INEC had not been determined to rubbish the Nigerian people and had followed what was agreed to in 2003, we won't be where we are. But they didn't have any sense of shame. And then, after repeatedly telling Nigerians that nothing will shake electronic transmission, blah, 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 Mahmoud, Yakubu, suddenly did the opposite and is still walking around without feeling shame. When the people are reduced to that, they are finished as a people.
But I think they jumped on a clause on that
really
electoral.
put for that kind of thing.
Okay, now when Pastor Oaks was here, he told us that some of the 2 people that punctured that that stuff was Senator
Ojo
Kalu and Senator
Lawal,
the former. They were the one that
created
said exemption that their area didn't have network where there's going to be a transmission. Sure. But from explanation, we now know that when the iRev is uploaded, there's no network. When you get to a place where there is network,
it's just like if you send WhatsApp where there is no network.
Look, they throw in those exceptions. These guys, I say, are criminals. They throw in those exceptions so that they can cause confusion. They know what they're doing. But it's our country. It's our error to have those kinds of people in public life. They should never have been in public life. One of the most important tests for public life should be personal integrity. It should include a track record of service, sacrificial giving of self for the common good. Most of these guys don't have it. You think that because they now are called senators, they will behave differently? No.
So we're gradually rounding up. As we go towards 2027, we cannot deny the fact, we're in the media, that Peter Obi has a traction. I mean, he has a magnetic followership. We can tell you that from our analysis. That's number one. Then the youth somehow line up, behind him. Now, what's your message to the youth?
Well, the future belongs to them. They have the most to lose. People like me are in the departure lounge.
You still have a lot of power in you, sir.
I'm not going to probably look for a job or anything again. The rest of my life I've done with hustle, as they say. All I need is 1.5 meals a day. In fact, one sometimes. Basically, I have a house in my village. I can just stay there. So it's them whose future really is at stake. And they have a moral obligation to themselves and then to the common good to say, never again. Which is what I said when the elections of 1993 were annulled. I wrote an article in The Guardian that was titled, "We Must Say Never Again."
In fact, I saw that sticker in Lagos, that 1993, a green sticker like that on cars, never again.
I wrote the article in The Guardian. From Boston. I voted in the elections. 2 days later, I traveled out to a conference in Boston, and that was where I heard of the annulment. And I withdrew from the conference, went back to my hotel room, and began to type an op-ed piece, which I then faxed to The Guardian. It was titled, "We Must Say Never Again." So, young people should say to themselves, never again. How can a couple of 100, at most 1,000 people hold the whole country hostage? State capture has become our reality. When in South Africa, state capture was seen coming, the South African Parliament pushed and had a commission, the Zondo Commission on State Capture. I was on the board of a South African company, and every meeting we went to literally started with the issue of state capture. The essence of the board literally became preventing your company from being seen as involved in state capture. Nigeria's state capture is almost eulogized. I don't know what happened to us, how we got here. God help us.
Amen.
It's been more than maybe like 40 minutes talking to you, and we can just go on and go on and go on. And we know you to be a patriot. You've exemplified it. The structures you put on ground, Lagos Business Code is one of them. One that you can't replicate any other place. Viewers, we've had our Professor Emeritus, Professor Pat Utomi with us today on Voting Arena. Everything you've said, we've heard, and we'll pass it across. And we hope it's going to be a note where people will listen and change and become a nation where everything works for everybody. It's been Voting Arena. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Till next time. Bye.